Hi there, I'm Cesar. I did a PhD in computer science, and in the last few years, I have been invited to peer review quite a few research papers in the field of software engineering and applied machine learning. And as a researcher, I have played in both sides of the game, submitting my own papers to journals and conferences and receiving many kinds of reviews and feedback. So I think that this dual perspective of being playing in both sides of the field has given me a better understanding of the peer reviewing process, and also made me realize how challenging it is to actually do a good peer review. So over time, I have developed a personal approach to make my peer reviewing more effective and efficient. So in this video, I will share my personal approach to this. I will talk about the reviewer's flow that I have polished over time, which allows me to deliver a decent peer review within a reasonable amount of time. So if you ever received a paper to review and would like to know a bit more, just stick around for some practical tips to hopefully enhance the quality of your review. So let's start. What exactly is a peer review? In academic circles, peer reviewing is the process of evaluating the quality of a research paper to decide if it is worth publishing in a journal or presented at a conference. This task is given to peer reviewers, and these are people just like you and me, who are supposed to be experts in the field and whose opinions directly influence the decisions to accept or reject the paper. So here is how the peer reviewing flow works in a simple way. The authors, you and me, for example, submit our research paper, and then an editor takes a quick look at it, and if the editor decides it is worth reviewing, then the paper is sent to the peer reviewers for evaluation. And if not, it is automatically rejected right there. And the reviewers have usually one more or so to give the feedback about the paper, and then the editor takes those reviews and makes a final decision. The paper can be accepted, rejected, or sent back to the authors for more revisions and corrections. And in this last case, it means that the author have actually a chance to tweak the paper and resubmit it, starting the cycle again. And I actually think that not getting a rejection right away is a very good sign, because actually in my papers for which I have received rejections, this has been later accepted after a few rounds of major revisions. But let's get back to the peer reviewing process. So first, let's acknowledge that peer reviews are essentially personal opinions about the quality and merits of a research paper. So these opinions can sometimes seem biased, contradictory, or even completely foolish. And indeed, the history of science is full of examples where really great papers were initially rejected. And anyways, despite not being perfect, peer reviewing is still the less terrible method that the academic community has found to assess the quality of science. So let's just accept that peer reviewing is imperfect. So when I receive an invitation to review a research paper, the first things I do is to download the PDF and skim through it. I don't read anything other than the title, the abstract, and maybe the introduction section. So my decision of whether to accept the review or not is practically based only on how the paper is presented. So for example, a good paper must have readable figures, be written in LaTeX, have the right number of pages and references, and so on. So I trust that the editor has already done an initial assessment of the quality of the paper. And he or she has decided that it is worth sending it to reviewers. So once I accept the review, I follow a two-step process. First, I do a quick review, and then I go for a more detailed review. So in the quick review, the first thing I do is that I print the paper to see how it looks on paper. I personally believe that a good paper always feels nice when printed, and I then search for a clear novelty claim statement, which is usually written in the introduction section. And this statement is super important, and I cannot emphasize this more. A well-written and sound novelty claim is super important. It might read something like, in this paper, we propose a new method X to solve problem Y. So if I can easily find a sentence like this, or at least a summary of contributions, it is definitely a red flag. And as a reviewer, I don't want to waste time figuring out what the paper is all about. So the main reason for me to reject a paper is first, lack of novelty, and second, poor presentation. And I think that fixing the novelty issue is much more difficult for authors, but on the other hand, improving presentation is much more easy to do. It is basically putting extra work. So for instance, there are simple things that can make significant differences, such as adding real-world examples, improving figures and tables, and clarifying sections. So in summary, I asked myself 3 key questions during the quick review. First question is, do I understand the paper after reading the title and abstract? And the second question is the paper beautiful? I mean, it is well structured with high quality figures, and I feel that there is a good balance of text and visuals. And the third question is about reproducibility. Does it include a link to a GitHub repository or any data source about the experiments made? And this last question is good because it would demonstrate the credibility of the research. So if I answer to this question as a yes, then I start looking at the paper with good eyes and focus on trying to help the authors to get it through. But if the answer to this question is no, I, as a reviewer, start preparing evidence for the editor that the paper isn't worth publishing. So after this, I move on to a more detailed review. And this is the most time-consuming part. So what I do is that I set a self-imposed time limit of 2 hours for myself to do this. My goal is to provide constructive feedback to the authors if the paper is good, or otherwise to make it clear to the editor that the paper should not be published, because some papers are just bad. And I use a checklist to guide my review. And I ask myself a few questions. For example, is the idea novel and it is filling knowledge gaps? Or are the contributions clear after reading the intro? Are the research questions well defined and relevant? Does the methodology make sense to me? Are the conclusions well supported by the results? Does it have the right number of citations? Is the paper well written and enjoyable to read? If I can check all these boxes, I generally recommend the paper for acceptance. If not, then I look for arguments to justify its rejection. So I would like to talk a little bit now about the difference between good and bad reviews, because I have seen a lot of bad reviews, and just few really good ones. So I have seen a few patterns for bad reviews. For example, sometimes it is obvious that the reviewer didn't actually read the whole paper at all, or that they are obviously being negatively opinionated about the paper, or they don't really offer any constructive feedback, or the comments are simply vague and unhelpful. So for example, I have seen in real reviews things like figure 3 is not clear, or the methodology is not consistent, and these type of comments are really not helpful for the authors because they don't explain why or how to improve the paper. Comments should be specific, like for example, figure 3 should describe X by doing Y. This is much better. So a good review, it provides positive criticism about the paper to the authors, and good reviews give balanced feedback. They should also provide evidence to support the reviewer's claims, like for example, pointing the authors to related papers that are relevant. And I also think that all the suggestions should be both actionable and irrefutable. So here is an example of a good statement. In the related paper X, it is shown that the analysis you use in section 3 is not the most suitable for your particular use case. So please explain why you use this method. This is good, I think. So to help me out, I use a simple template to guide my review, and at the same time, be sure that I covered all the aspects of the review. My template is actually quite simple. It includes sections for a summary, positive aspects, major and minor inconsistencies, questions for the authors, nitpicking issues, and comments to the editors. I will let you a link to the template in the description down below if you want to look at it. So having this predefined structure has been really helpful to me, and I encourage you to always use a template when reviewing the paper. So to wrap up, the quality of peer reviews lies in balancing rigorous critique with constructive feedback. And I think that becoming an effective peer reviewer is an essential aspect of our professional life. It is also good as an opportunity to stay up to date with what is going on in our research field. And because of this, I tend to accept and perform most of the review requests that I receive. I think that adopting structured, thoughtful, and ethical reviewing practices is becoming more and more important over time. And I know it is a lot of extra unpaid work, but I try to keep in mind that this is actually a good way for me to contribute to the advancements of science, and at the same time that it enhances my own understanding of the computer science research field. So this is all for me. Let me know what you think about peer reviewing, peer reviewers, and peer reviews. See you in the next one. Bye.